I never thought a simple text message could shatter my world, but that's exactly what happened on a quiet Tuesday evening in September, just as the trees in our suburban Massachusetts neighborhood were beginning to show hints of autumn. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 52 years old, a high school history teacher, and the proud father of 2 children. My son, Kevin, is finishing his residency in Chicago. And then there's Ellie, my 26-year-old daughter, who recently moved back home after completing her master's degree in Boston. Ellie had been my rock after losing my wife, Carol, to cancer 3 years ago. While Kevin buried himself in medical school, Ellie was the one who called every day, who flew back for weekends to make sure I wasn't drowning in grief. When she announced she was moving back to work for a local marketing firm, I was secretly relieved. The house had grown too quiet. That evening I was grading papers in the living room while Ellie was upstairs showering. Her phone, left on the coffee table, buzzed with a notification. I glanced over, not intending to pry, but her screen lit up with a preview of the message. "Dad's working late again tonight. Come over at 8. My brow furrowed in confusion. I wasn't working late. In fact, I'd cancelled my department meeting to be home for dinner with Ellie. Before I could process this, her phone buzzed again with another message. This one clearly meant for someone else, but mistakenly sent to Dad in her contacts. "I can't wait to feel you inside me again. These secret meetings are driving me crazy, but God, the danger makes it so much hotter." My hands trembled as I set down my red grading pen. The blood rushed to my face, a mixture of embarrassment and shock. Obviously, this wasn't meant for me. Ellie had accidentally sent these messages to Dad instead of whoever she was seeing. I placed her phone exactly where it had been and returned to my papers, trying to erase what I'd read from my mind. But the words kept flashing behind my eyelids. Secret meetings? Danger? What was my daughter involved in? The shower upstairs stopped running. I heard Ellie's footsteps moving around her bedroom, then the sound of her blow-drying her hair. I tried to focus on the Civil War essays in front of me, but my mind was racing. It wasn't the intimate nature of the text that disturbed me. Ellie was an adult, and her romantic life was her business. What troubled me deeply was the secrecy, the mention of danger. Was she having an affair with someone married? Was she putting herself at risk? Ellie came downstairs wearing jeans and a nice blouse, her damp hair swept into a casual updo. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her bracelet as she entered the living room. "Hey, Dad," she said, grabbing her phone. Her eyes widened slightly as she checked it, and I saw panic flash across her face before she quickly composed herself. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Yeah, just work stuff," she stammered, quickly typing something. "Actually, I forgot I have a meeting with a client tonight. Last-minute thing. I'm sorry about dinner." I nodded, watching her closely. "No problem. We can do it tomorrow." "Definitely," she said, grabbing her purse. "Don't wait up. These meetings can run late." After she left, I sat in the silent house, troubled by the gnawing feeling in my gut. In all the years I'd known my daughter, I'd never caught her in a lie before. She had always been honest to a fault. The kind of child who would confess to taking an extra cookie before you even noticed one was missing. I pulled out my own phone and opened our family tracker app, something we'd started using after Carol died. We had promised to always keep it active, a small way of staying connected, despite the physical distance. I hesitated, my finger hovering over Ellie's icon. Was I really going to spy on my adult daughter? The memory of her text flashed in my mind again. The danger makes it so much hotter. What kind of danger was my daughter in? I tapped her icon. The map zoomed to a moving dot, heading north out of our suburb toward the lakeside area of town, the opposite direction from her office downtown. What troubled me even more was that this wasn't the trendy part of the lakefront with restaurants and bars. She was heading toward the old industrial section, mostly abandoned warehouses and a few art studios that hadn't yet been gentrified. I set my phone down and paced the living room. My daughter was lying to me about where she was going, sneaking off to meet someone in a questionable part of town, and talking about danger as if it were exciting. Every parental instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong. I grabbed my keys, then stopped. What was I doing? Ellie was 26, not 16. I couldn't just follow her like she was a teenager breaking curfew. But then I thought about Carol, about the promise I'd made to her in the hospital. "Take care of our babies," she'd whispered, "even if our babies were adults now." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. If Ellie was in trouble, I needed to know, even if it meant crossing a line I'd never thought I'd cross. The September evening had turned chilly as I drove toward the lakefront, following the blue dot on my phone screen. My headlights cut through wisps of fog rolling in from the water, creating an eerie atmosphere that matched my unsettled mind. I kept telling myself this was wrong, invading Ellie's privacy like this. But something deeper than curiosity was driving me. It was fear. Ellie's dot had stopped moving at a location near Harborview Drive, an area I hadn't visited in years. Once the heart of our town's shipping industry, it had fallen into decay when the major operations moved downstate. Now it was a strange patchwork of abandoned buildings, a few artist lofts, and storage facilities. I parked my Honda a block away, killing the headlights. The rational part of my brain was still arguing that I should turn around and go home, trust my daughter, respect her boundaries, but the message I'd seen kept replaying in my mind. The danger makes it so much hotter. With a deep breath, I stepped out of my car and walked toward the location on my phone. The only sounds were my footsteps on the cracked pavement and the distant lapping of lake waves against the old piers. Most of the buildings were dark, save for a few scattered windows, glowing with warm light. I slowed as I approached a renovated brick warehouse with Lakeside Studios painted on the entrance. This was where Ellie's location marker had stopped. The building looked legitimate enough. A sign listed various businesses: photography studios, a ceramics workshop, a few small batch manufacturers. Walking around to the side, I noticed a parking lot with about a dozen cars, including Ellie's blue Subaru. Next to it was a sleek black Tesla with tinted windows. Something about that car triggered a memory, but I couldn't place it. The side entrance to the building was propped open with a brick. I hesitated, then slipped inside, finding myself in a dimly lit hallway. Music drifted from somewhere upstairs, not loud, but rhythmic and low. I followed it up a flight of metal stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The second floor was laid out like a maze of small studios and workspaces. Most were dark, but light spilled from under one door at the end of the hall, along with the sound of voices. I moved closer, feeling like I was in a dream or a nightmare. "You can't keep doing this, Ellie." A man's voice, muffled but clearly agitated. I didn't have a choice. Ellie's voice, defensive. He was getting suspicious. "Your father is the least of our worries right now." I froze at the mention of myself. Whatever Ellie was involved in, it was more complicated than a simple affair. "Richardson is breathing down my neck," the man continued. "If he finds out about us, about what we're doing—" "He won't," Ellie interrupted. "I've been careful." "Careful? You call bringing those files home careful?" "Files? What files?" My confusion deepened. "I needed to work on them somewhere he wouldn't see me," Ellie said. "Dad never goes in my room. This isn't a game, Ellie. If Richardson discovers we're investigating him, we're both finished. You've seen what happened to Martinez." I leaned closer to the door, straining to hear. The name Richardson sounded familiar. Then it clicked. Michael Richardson, the CEO of Vertex Marketing, where Ellie worked. I'd met him once at a company function Ellie had invited me to. A tall, imposing man with a politician's smile that never reached his eyes. "Martinez was sloppy," Ellie replied. "We won't be." "You don't get it, do you?" The man's voice grew louder. "Martinez didn't just lose his job. He lost everything. His reputation, his savings when the lawyers were done with him. And those weren't accidents, Ellie. The brake failure, the gas leak in his apartment." My blood ran cold. What was my daughter involved in? "That's why we need to finish this," Ellie said, her voice firm. "Get the evidence to the FBI before Richardson realizes what we're doing." FBI. Evidence. My mind was reeling. 2 more weeks, the man said. "We get the transfer records, connect them to the offshore accounts, and then we're done. Until then, we need to be invisible. No mistakes." "I know, David. I know what's at stake." David. The name struck me like a physical blow. David Mercer. Ellie's former professor from graduate school. I'd met him at her graduation, a serious man in his early 40s with intelligent eyes and a reserved manner. Ellie had mentioned working with him on a research project, but nothing more. I stepped back from the door, trying to process what I'd heard. This wasn't an affair, or at least not just an affair. My daughter and her former professor were investigating her boss for what sounded like serious financial crimes. My relief was short-lived as the implications sank in. If what they were saying about this Richardson character was true, about Martinez's accidents, then Ellie was in real danger. The kind that had nothing to do with forbidden romance and everything to do with powerful people protecting themselves. Before I could decide what to do, the door swung open. I found myself face to face with David Mercer, whose expression shifted from surprise to alarm in an instant. Behind him, Ellie gasped, her face draining of color. "Dad? What are you doing here?" The shock in her voice cut me to the core. I had no explanation, no excuse that wouldn't make me sound like an obsessive, overprotective father who couldn't respect his adult daughter's privacy. I started, but David cut me off. "Get inside, now." He pulled me into the room and quickly shut the door behind me. "Did anyone see you come in? Anyone at all?" "No, I don't think so." My gaze moved between David and Ellie, settling on my daughter. "I saw your text, Ellie. The one you meant to send to him. I was worried." Ellie closed her eyes briefly, understanding dawning on her face. The message that went to Dad instead of David. Oh my God! What message? David looked between us. Ellie shook her head. "It doesn't matter." She turned to me, her expression a mix of embarrassment and anger. "So you followed me? Used our family tracker?" "I thought you were in trouble," I said weakly. "I am in trouble," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "Just not the kind you thought." The small studio room was cluttered with evidence of their investigation. A whiteboard covered in names and connections, stacks of financial documents, and 2 laptops with multiple screens displaying what looked like banking records. A makeshift break area held a coffee maker and empty takeout containers, suggesting they'd been working here for hours, maybe days. "You need to tell me everything," I said, my teacher voice unconsciously taking over. "Right now." David glanced at Ellie, who nodded slowly. He gestured to the chairs around a small table, and we all sat down. "I used to work for Vertex before I became a professor," David began, his voice low and measured. "I was their financial controller for 3 years. I left because I suspected Richardson was involved in something illegal, but I couldn't prove it. Money laundering," Ellie added. "When I started working there after graduation, I noticed the same irregularities David had seen years before, only now they were more sophisticated. Ellie contacted me," David continued. "She remembered discussions from my ethics class about corporate whistleblowing. We started comparing notes and eventually began a more formal investigation." My eyes moved to the whiteboard where the name Monarch Foundation was circled multiple times. "What's Monarch?" "Richardson's charity," Ellie explained. "On paper, it funds educational initiatives in developing countries. In reality, it's funneling money to shell companies and returning most of it back to Richardson and the company's board members. We're talking millions," David added, "maybe tens of millions." I let this sink in, my worry only increasing. "And this Martinez person? The one with the accidents?" A shadow crossed David's face. "Tony Martinez was Vertex's internal auditor. He started asking questions about the Foundation's financial statements 3 months ago. He was fired for performance issues 2 weeks later. Then his car's brakes failed on the highway. He survived, but barely. A week after he got home from the hospital, there was a gas leak in his apartment." "Jesus," I muttered. "Have you gone to the police?" "With what?" Ellie asked. "Suspicions, partial records. We need concrete evidence connecting Richardson directly to both the financial crimes and what happened to Martinez." "That's what we're close to getting," David said. "International wire transfers that can only be authorized by Richardson, matching deposits to personal accounts hidden behind layers of offshore corporations." I looked at my daughter. seeing her in a new light. The determined set of her jaw reminded me of Carol, the same unwavering commitment to doing what she believed was right, regardless of the cost. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked her softly. Ellie's expression softened. "I wanted to protect you, Dad. After everything with Mom, I couldn't bear the thought of you worrying about me too. And honestly, I was afraid you'd try to stop me." "She's right," David interjected. "The fewer people who know, the safer everyone is. Richardson has connections, former FBI agents on his security team, a brother-in-law in the police department." I ran a hand over my face, trying to process everything. So the texts, the secret meetings. Ellie had the grace to look embarrassed. We needed a cover story for why I was spending so much time away from the office. Office romance is the oldest cliché in the book. Nobody looks too closely at two people sneaking around if they think they're just sleeping together. "And are you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Dad!" Ellie's cheeks flushed. David cleared his throat awkwardly. "Our relationship is complicated, but the work comes first." The non-answer was answer enough. I decided to let it go for now. There were bigger concerns. "So what's your end game here? You get these records and then what?" "We have a contact at the FBI's white-collar crime division," David explained. "Once we have the complete paper trail, we hand everything over. They take it from there." "2 more weeks," Ellie added. "That's all we need." I was about to respond when a sound from the hallway silenced us all. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching the door. David moved quickly to the window while Ellie switched off the lights. My heart pounded as we sat in darkness, listening. The footsteps stopped outside the door, and the handle turned slowly. Locked, thankfully. After a pause, the footsteps retreated. "Security guard," David whispered, peering through the blinds. "He's heading back downstairs." Ellie turned the desk lamp back on, her face pale in the dim light. "That was too close. We need to move locations. And you," David said, looking at me, "need to decide what you're going to do." They were both watching me now, waiting. I thought about Carol, about the promise I'd made to keep our children safe. But I also thought about the values we'd raised them with: honesty, integrity, standing up for what's right. "I want to help," I said finally. Ellie's eyes widened. "Dad, no, it's too dangerous." "I'm already involved," I pointed out. "Richardson has seen me at company events. I'm your father. If he suspects you, he'll be watching me too." David nodded slowly. "He's not wrong, Ellie. Besides," I continued, "I have something you both lack. A completely legitimate reason to access Vertex's headquarters." "What do you mean?" David asked. "The company sponsors our school's internship program. As faculty coordinator, I have a meeting with their HR director next week. I'll be in the building with proper credentials, no suspicion." A spark of interest lit David's eyes. "The server room is on the 3rd floor," Ellie finished. "Dad's meeting will be on 4. I nodded. "I can wear your fancy watch," I said to Ellie, gesturing to the Apple Watch on her wrist that she'd shown me could clone key cards with the right app. "It's risky," David warned. "So is what you're doing," I countered. "But 3 people working together can finish this faster than 2. Ellie looked at me with a mix of pride and concern. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" I thought about the text message that had started it all, the one that had initially broken my heart with its implications of secrecy and danger, how wrong I'd been about the nature of that danger, and yet how right to be concerned. "Your mother would never forgive me if I let you face this alone," I said simply. 2 weeks later, I sat in our living room with Ellie and David, watching the evening news. The anchor's voice was solemn as he reported the breaking story. Michael Richardson, CEO of Vertex Marketing, was arrested today on charges of money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit murder. FBI officials credit anonymous whistleblowers for providing the crucial evidence that led to today's indictment. Ellie squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back. The text message that had once crushed my heart had led me to a truth I needed to face. My daughter wasn't just grown up. She was brave, principled, and every bit her mother's daughter. "What will you do now?" I asked them both. David and Ellie exchanged a look that told me their complicated relationship had become somewhat clearer during our 2 weeks of working together. "I've been offered a position with the FBI's Corporate Crime Division," Ellie said. "They were impressed with our investigation, and I'm returning to teaching full-time," David added, "though I might be looking at positions closer to Washington, D.C. He glanced at Ellie, who smiled back at him. As for me, I was returning to my classroom with a new perspective. I had always taught my students that history is made by ordinary people who choose to stand up for what's right, often at great personal risk. Now I could tell them that with absolute conviction, because I had seen it firsthand. Sometimes a message sent by mistake can lead you exactly where you need to be.